Welcome to the Franklin Method Fellowship. I'm your co-host Solange Ross, and I'm joined by my colleague Deborah Chassie. We are physical therapists specializing in the pelvic floor. In this podcast, we share our passion for the Franklin Method, an evidence-based therapeutic approach using mental imagery, movement, and awareness to improve posture, the way you move and feel, and overall well-being. We integrate the Franklin Method into functional everyday movements, all forms of exercise, and our physical therapy practices. We also share a love for talking about the pelvic floor. We hope to inspire you to move better and feel better in your body. Always check with your doctor before beginning an exercise program. This podcast is not intended to be used as medical advice. Let's grab your Franklin Method balls and bands. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Franklin Method Fellowship. My name is Solange Ross, and I'm here with my co-host, Deborah Chassie. And today we have a bonus episode for you with a very special guest. We have Susan Lowell DeSolorzano. Susan Lowell DeSolorzano. Susan Lowell DeSolorzano. Welcome. I said it
3 times fast.
It is not an easy thing to say. But in our recent episodes on the podcast, we've been talking about the spine, and we've talked about the spine as a tensegrity structure. And in this bonus episode for you, we have Susan, who's going to talk about biotensegrity and how it applies to the human body. So before we begin, Deborah is going to tell us about Susan's background.
Yeah, thank you, Solange. And it's great to be here. I'm really excited to hear what Susan has to say in explaining tensegrity and biotensegrity. We're just excited to have you on, Susan. Susan is the co-founder and board member of the Stephen M. Levin Biotensegrity Archive. And she's the showrunner and the co-host for the Biotensegrity Tea Party. And Susan wrote a book, right? You wrote a book, and it's called Everything Moves, How Biotensegrity Informs Human Movement. So I'm really excited about that book too. I'm going to have to purchase that and read it. Yeah, and Susan has a background in Tai Chi Chuan, internal Chinese martial arts, music, and kinesthetic learning. And I've listened to some other episodes that you've been on, some other podcast sites, and I'm just so impressed with your kinesthetic learning. I have grandchildren, and right away I took some of that information where you talked about the pennies and the squaring them. And I did that with my granddaughters, and I was really excited to just see their response and how quickly they picked it up. So thank you.
Great.
Yeah, thank you for your contribution to learning.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So in the notes below, we're including information about your YouTube channel for the Biotensegrity Archive, and that people can sign up on the email. And with that, they can be part of the Biotensegrity Tea Party. Is that correct? Or do they just get the episodes?
No, when we do them, we do it as a live Zoom meeting. Mm-hmm. And so if we have time before it starts, we have a little chat and introduction, meet new people, anybody we don't know, and then we go live to YouTube. And then it's a little more formal. And after presentations, we do a Q&A and discussion. And then at the very end, when we sign off YouTube, we always hang around for at least a few minutes for an after party. So you really get to meet online, some of these amazing people that present, but that are kind of our regulars who attend, all of our Biotensegrity geeky friends.
Yeah, awesome. Well,
Yeah,
and
and
I
you,
was able to attend the Biotensegrity Interest Group symposium or meeting in 2012 or 2013 and was
I
very
think
impressed with
2015 when the
2015.
International Fascia Research Congress met just here outside of DC, Washington, DC, where I am. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that was really awesome. Great experience.
great. So
Yeah,
everyone should sign up because it's a great opportunity to be in a Zoom room with all of these phenomenal people.
And that's biotensegrityarchive.org, where they can do that, where they can get on that email list.
great. Thank you.
So welcome, Susan. Yay!
Thank
And
you. Thank you for mentioning everything. I will say that the book, I actually have more than one book, but this is the Biotensegrity book, Everything Moves, has almost somewhere around 100, because I tried counting them at one point. Experientials is what I call them in the book, which are things I have you do so that you can help to begin to understand what biotensegrity is about through doing, through building something, drawing something, playing with a rope, um, doing a breathing exercise, or just a number of different um, ways, multi-sensory kind of ways, including playing with making oobleck and other goopy materials and playing with them. So
That's
depending
so
on the
awesome.
principle.
yeah, and we love
Yeah.
that. And that goes so nicely with the Franklin method because we learn by experiencing. And everyone who's here listening to the podcast is here to have an experience in their body. So they can get your book and have an experience many other things also.
Yeah, because when we're told something, right, we're getting it through, we're getting all these filters that are involved in the spoken word and the written word, right? Cultural filters, just all kinds of different, memories associated with words. But when you experience something, when you feel it, it's direct. It bypasses the language center of the brain, which is a great thing to have. Don't get me wrong. But it gives you that direct physical experience. And I've been familiarizing myself with the Franklin method because so many people um, just love what it does for them. And I see it as a system of, yeah, very conscious engagement with the self, um, experiential, and also that it's not a checklist of now feel this, now feel this, now feel this. It's what do you feel? Do you feel this? Can you look for this? And it invites people, and that's relaxation, which to me is related to play, which is really how we learn best when we're feeling comfortable.
Yeah, and that's what we really enjoyed about the Franklin method too. So since both Solange and I went to physical therapy school, we're learning everything by the book. There's some experiences, but nothing in comparison to what we've learned in the Franklin method. And so, uh, we were just really able to embody it, embody the movements and really experience it for ourselves. So that's been phenomenal for me. And I remember things a lot better when I can experience it.
It really is an invitation to befriend your body and develop such a kind and nurturing relationship with the body. So, well, let's get into it, Susan. What is biotensegrity and how does it apply to the human body?
Okay, that's a quick and easy question. Um, so I'm going to take it in parts. And biotensegrity is a theory of regarding biology, all biological life, humans, everything living, everything that ever has lived, in terms of um, energetic balance and process that is not unrelated to structure, but is nothing is static. But all of that comes from this idea of biotensegrity is really tensegrity in biology. So the bio is biology and the tensegrity is tensegrity, which then begs the question, what is tensegrity?
Right.
And here is the thing. I wish I could first put a tensegrity in the hands of everyone who's listening, because then I could just say to you, watch this, do this, feel this. What do you notice? The way you do when you're teaching people to engage with their own bodies using the Franklin method, I would do pretty much the same thing to teach somebody something about biotensegrity, because these tensegrity structures have only been around for about 100 years. From what we can tell, the earliest possible invention or, person who came to devise one was around 1920. Carl Jorgensen, who was a Latvian rifleman who at the time was in Moscow working as a sculptor, but he was also, on Lenin's team. There's a picture of him driving Lenin's Model T Ford or sitting in the back seat. So this was 100 years ago, but it sort of got lost. When regimes changed, all the sculptures he had built disappeared. And so it took us another 20, 30 years before Kenneth Snelson in the United States and David George Emmerich separately and at the same time, pretty much in Europe, came up with this idea, not just the idea, but the physical structure that we call a tensegrity, which is, it's a structure where the wooden or steel or whatever they're made of, bars or sticks, do not touch each other, and yet you can build a tower. And if you think about a tower, and of course, if you're watching, Deborah's got one right here, and that is called the squish, SKWISH. If you look at that, that's probably the easiest one to find. That was designed by Tom Flemons, the late Tom Flemons. And if you go to the Tom Flemons archive, you can see all kinds of tensegrity designs that he built. He's no longer around, but his archive has even Alfred, a full body human kind of structure, all made with tensegrity. So it's a lot of fun and interesting to see. And why we care about these weird tensegrity structures, it's sort of a win-win relationship between the sticks and the strings, okay? It's made with sticks and strings. But as I was saying earlier, a tower, if you're when you're a kid, you're gonna build a tower, and you take your block and you put it down, you put another block on top, and another one, another one, another one. And you have to keep it lined up right, or it gets wobbly and then it falls down, and that can be fun in itself. The problem is that for thousands of years, at least, people have envisioned the human spine as a tower like that, like one you would build out of rocks, out of stone. And the insight that Steve Levin had, and he's not the only one, but that he had back in the mid-70s, was that what's going on with the spine is more like a tower made out of those tensegrity structures, like what Deborah was showing a moment ago. And here in Washington, D.C., now it's in a storage box somewhere, but since the mid-70s and up until a few years ago, we had this 60-foot high tower, Kenneth Snelson's Needle Tower, and it's huge, and it has incredibly unusual properties that we're not used to seeing. And all of these straight steel bars are suspended, are islanded in this tensional webbing. And when they brought it down a few years ago, you can see it on YouTube, and then they went to set the tower back up again. They brought it down to do repairs maybe 20 years ago. And when they're setting that tower back up again, there is no sagging. Okay, so it's an integrated structure that's fully distributing all of the forces it encounters from any direction. And it's distributing them so fully that there isn't a place where, if you're raising this tower, it sinks or it sags or it bends. No, it's got that integrated structure from the bottom to the top. And when it oscillates it's a ready oscillator, these tensegrities are. So vibrations, I know you guys study that too, and the vibrations in the body. And it's a very ready oscillator. And when it oscillates, it does so helically. So there's spiral movement that's actually a condensation and an expansion that is omnidirectional. Top to bottom, front to back, left to right, in to out. Really, it's in to out. So I hope that's not overwhelming. So we take that very unusually behaving structure, and then we say, okay, now that we know this is possible, and we know that nature, who's been building life forms for billions of years, takes every opportunity to make things as energy efficient as possible, which is why we can do well. We can move well and do well when we're relaxed, because we can be energy efficient. Wouldn't nature take advantage of this win-win kind of compositional possibility? And so we actually envision it at all scale levels of the system. And we know that it's been theorized at all scale levels now by many scholars. But of course, at the time, back in the 70s, when Steve was first looking at it, it was not so well recognized.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. You know, what I love best about the biotensegrity structure is I like to think of it at the cellular level too. And, you know, in the cellular level, we have microtubules, which would represent these sticks, basically. And then we have the cytoplasm and also the organelles. And all of that makes up that cell. And then the amazing thing with that cell is that with all of that information, with the structure, etc., the cell knows what to do. And then outside the cell, there's a type of surface tension too. And based on that information, the cell knows what to do. So to me, I mean, I just find that so fascinating.
Right. So that's a good point. So at the whole organism level, the organism knows what to do. We don't know how, but we do know we do know that everything we do is coordinated, is part of everything else that's going on. And so, yes, when you're thinking of it at the cellular level, you can also think of it at the subcellular level. And as you spoke of, a sort of more macro but meso level, that's more of a tissue level, right? So, you know, if we think of the structure of a bone, for example, and then at beyond that, at the whole organism level. So there are multiple scale levels that this win-win collaboration of push and pull happens. And because it's a tensioned system, can I give you an exercise that involves a tensegrity, which I know not everyone will have? Because I know you've got one there, Deborah. Is that all right? I want you to find a triangle of strings because it is triangulated, but not always can you find a full side with yes. And
Yeah,
put
see
those 3 strings on your palm. Stand that up that way. That's it. Now put your other palm very gently on the top. And I know you can do soft touch because you're a physiotherapist. And hardly push at all. Just keep it there and then begin to bring your hands closer. And what do you feel?
feel pushing away from me. Like I feel it, like
So you can feel the resistance.
yeah, I feel the
That's
resistance.
great. And the squishes are made with kind of stretchy bands, but a basic tensegrity that we make for a basic model doesn't stretch. I want to see now, try again. Can you feel the helical action as it gets more condensed?
Yes.
Yes, you
It's
feel
going
that?
to the left. Yeah. It's going
Yes,
to the
you
left.
can feel that turning. It's
So
going
it's
to the
kind it's
left.
like this.
It's
So the
going to the
top is
left on the
going,
top, and it's going on the right on the to the right on the bottom, right? So it's
yeah,
yeah, and
that's really amazing.
it's doing that as it condenses. So even though energetically
Wow.
lines of push and pull are straight lines, okay, right? You can't push in a curved line. You can't pull in a curved line. Those are straight lines of energetic exchange. But within these configurations, what manifests is helical mobility. And if you
I love
pull
that.
2 of those sticks, pull 2 opposite sticks further away from each other.
Like
So
this.
you could do it that way, or you could, yeah, but how about if you grab the center of a stick?
The
Like
center of
reach
a
in,
stick. Okay.
yeah, and the
Like
opposite.
this. All
Yes,
right.
and pull them
Pull
away.
them away.
And what do you notice? And then push them together.
Yeah. It changes its shape. So when it's pulled away like this, right?
What happens
But
to
I
the
feel it pulling. I feel it pulling
yes?
me back in.
And what happens to the yellow and black ones when you push it together? Do they push together or get further apart?
No, they push together.
And when you pull apart the red and green ones, what happens to the yellow and black ones? When you pull the red and green ones apart,
Yeah.
what happens to the yellow and black?
They separate. They go apart from each
They
other or away from
also
each
go
other.
apart. Now that is a very unusual behavior, and that's called auxetic behavior. And it's part of why we study something called soft matter. What's going on there? Think of how many things we've got. A sponge, a spongy ball, right? If you squish it top to bottom, it gets wider on the sides. If you squeeze it in, right? And Solange is experiencing this now, right? But that's not what's happening with the tensegrity. When you squish it in side to side, you'll see Solange's tensegrity. Solange's ball is getting bigger in the other directions to compensate. But what's happening with the tensegrity is that it's all condensing or it's all expanding. And what I would invite you to do is to take this into your breath. Okay. I met many years ago a person who's very well established in the yoga field. And she wanted to ask me questions about biotensegrity. And she had been taught that when you inhale, your rib cage gets, wider, your diaphragm goes down, and your spine gets shorter. And that when you exhale, the ribs relax and the diaphragm relaxes and the spine gets longer. That physical model is an assumption that's built on that rubber ball that Solange had, that kind of linear behavior. When I squish it this way, it stretches that way, like you had a little wad of gum. So I want you to take a few breaths using that assumption. Okay. And we have incredible number of possibilities with our body. So you can do something where you can think of your spine shortening, but your torso expanding in all directions. Just give it a try. And you can think of your spine lengthening as you exhale. You can do things to lengthen your spine as you exhale. Okay. So when we have a given framework or an image, because our bodies are amazingly resilient and have great potential for all kinds of movement, yeah, we can go with that metaphor. But now let's explore what tensegrity is teaching us. Tensegrity is teaching us that it is possible for a structure, when we inhale, for everything to expand in all directions. So just thinking of the torso expanding when you inhale and the spine getting longer. And on your exhale, that lengthening, kind of releasing a little bit. Just do that for a few breaths. And then why let just the spine and the torso have all the fun? Think of your skin. Think of your whole entire body bubble. And when you inhale, feel like you can expand omnidirectionally, everything expanding. All the bones getting further away from each other. And then on that exhale, think of everything condensing, everything getting closer together. All the way to the top of the head, to the fingertips, to the toes. And then just, you can integrate the two experiences, you can compare them, and you can consider the differences.
I loved that experience, Susan. I just felt like thinking about the tensegrity and just like everything expanding and lengthening. It felt very similar to a Franklin Method exercise that we have in his book, Grow Younger Daily. And it's where you're actually breathing with your skin. So when I do that, I just feel that there is so much possibility. Whereas the first one, if I can embody my diaphragm, in certain things, that feels good. But this just felt next level. And there's just this energetic quality about it, that, it's like, oh, like, well, where actually is my skin? Like, can I feel all parts of my skin? Like feeling the skin, well, that's kind of limitless. It's like, can I feel every little millimeter of the skin? So there was something that was so complete. It's like I'm breathing with the trillions of cells in my body. So I loved both, but like, it's like, I'm loving the second more, and
sure. I mean, yeah, right. We're movement people. So any breathing exercise is going to have fun. It's going to be fun and be good, right? They're all going to teach something. But if you watch animals breathe, and they don't know about these frameworks that we have that are based on machines and buildings for regarding our body, which is what, has been happening for hundreds or thousands of years, depending on which model you're looking at. Animals know nothing of that. So if you get a chance to see or to watch a baby breathe, or a little chick in the egg, in the nest, I remember I was teaching for many years, I taught Tai Chi at a mental health day program in downtown DC. And so we had a lot of different kinds of people, a lot of different abilities, backgrounds, everything. And we were doing this exercise, and I asked them to imagine holding a bird.
Mm.
Okay, not a bird where it's standing on your hand, but if you're holding the body, and what is the bird doing? And breathe like you're feeling the bird breathe. And
Mhm.
one of these guys who almost never spoke at all said, I did hold a bird once.
Mm.
He had held a pigeon that somebody was raising pigeons. And I said, what did it feel like? And he answered by showing me. And he put his hands together like he was cupping the bird. And then his hands grew larger and further apart,
Mm.
and then closer together and more condensed. And he just did that for several breaths. He said that's what it felt like. So
Great.
this information that nature is trying to show us about life, living organisms at all scale
Mhm.
levels, and our bodies, this
Yeah,
is out there. It's accessible to us, but we don't always take the time to
that's
catch it.
true. Hmm.
Yeah.
You know what it reminds me of too, an experience that's coming to my mind as we're talking about this is when I had my first grandbaby and I went over to visit my daughter and the baby and her husband. And so they wanted to eat dinner. I said, "Oh, I'll hold the baby." So, and you guys can eat peacefully. My mother used to always do that. She'd always take the baby while I ate. Anyhow, so I'm lying on a recliner, not lying, but kind of reclined on a recliner, and I've got the baby right on my chest. And all of a sudden, I just started noticing her breath, and I thought, "Oh, I want to be connected with that breath." And so, what I would do is just like I don't know exactly how I did it, but I just breathed with her, like followed her breath. And it was the most awesome feeling. I just stayed like that for quite a while.
But I think that's what you're doing with your therapeutic touch. You're just
Yeah,
not doing it chest to chest. You're doing
right,
it, hand to leg, torso, arm, wherever you are,
right.
right? Where you have that connection that is full,
Yeah.
but that is not intending, that is not, it has an intention of connecting and fostering healing and all of that, but it doesn't have a doing intention. And what you
Hmm.
needed to do with the grandchild was listen to what was going on with them, but not listen with your ears, listen with
Right.
your whole body in
Yeah.
order for that connection so the two of you could function as a one,
Hmm.
which is I think what you must do, right? With your therapeutic practice. I know that we do it in movement classes with students as well. Putting your hand on a student in order to you know, pull their arm or push their shoulder or something like that is a very different thing from putting your hand on their shoulder blade to help them bring awareness
Yeah.
to that part of the body through the light touch. And now they can move in such a way that they're bringing that awareness in to what they're doing. I know,
Hmm.
again, I'm no expert in the Franklin method, but I've familiarized myself enough with the material. I think what biotensegrity offers the community is the sort of scientific underpinnings that, not that you need them, but that you can use if you choose to explain what it is you're doing and why it's effective, if you need to explain it in that scientific framework.
Hmm. Yeah.
Great. So let's see, where are we in our list of questions? I think we've covered a bunch.
Of course,
we
we make a plan, but then, we start dancing around and it goes everywhere. So,
Right. Well, a plan is always subject to change. We never
Yeah.
limit a plan.
Um, so let's go back, and because I think this is such an important point. How does biotensegrity offer a different perspective from conventional biomechanics? So I think that's a really important for people to understand.
yeah. Well, I'll say for anybody who's really interested um, in getting this understanding, I would recommend the interviews and the Biotensegrity Party episodes on the Biotensegrity Archive YouTube channel, where Leonid Bloom is interviewing Steve Levin about his years of, work in the field as an osteopath. Sorry, not an osteopath, as an orthopedic surgeon, and how he came to find and apply biotensegrity in his work, because at the time he was coming up as a medical doctor, they were developing this field of biomechanics. This new biomechanics field that we have now was really getting developed. And right from the beginning, Steve was uncomfortable with some of the machine model assumptions that are inside of it. I talked about how our spine as a column, I have in my book this wonderful Egyptian deity column, and it's made out of, it's a stacked spine. But we're not built that way. But that assumption of the spine as a column has been there in many cultures, for centuries. And in Western medicine, the work of Borelli, who died in 1679, but the book De Motu Animalium was published in 1680, and has the body with all these gears and levers, and there are counter weights and pulleys to move the arms. There are these pictures. It's freely available online. You can see it. We don't have any counterweights in our bodies. So really we kind of know we don't work that way. Nobody does an anatomical dissection and finds a gear, but we imagine from our wonderful, ingenious human contraptions, hinges, levers, gears, whatever it is. Then at some point in human history, we started to imagine that was the machinery inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, aren't we clever? And so what's happening with conventional biomechanics is that it's an extension of that. And there's a desire, completely understandable, that humans have, that we want to know stuff. And we want to know stuff even when that really can't be known.
Mm.
So if somebody taps you on the shoulder, what's going on beyond your skin? How is that process reduced to a bunch of mathematical equations?
Mm.
Well, that would be a very challenging thing to equation out, wouldn't it? You could measure the pressure on your shoulder. You could put a little thing there on your shoulder and measure, they pressed this hard on the skin, and there was that much displacement of energy. You can measure that. But once you get inside the skin, you cannot. But we want to. We want to think we can measure how those forces are flowing through the system, how that push on the shoulder could maybe make our right foot heavier, or could push us over, or any one of an innumerable things could happen as a result of somebody pushing you on your shoulder, right? And we know that so in those of us studying biotensegrity, we're saying what's happening inside has this kinematic indeterminacy. You are not able to know all the factors that you would need to know in order to create any useful equation. All of conventional biomechanics, because they're trying to, help people who need help because they're trying to heal from this or that, all that biomechanical analysis is done assuming you can simplify that mathematics of what's going on inside of us the way you could analyze any kind of machinery. And the thing is that you want your car mechanic to be able to go in and say, yeah, the axle is not quite da 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 da, or this needs to be tuned up that way. We value that kind of knowledge. But to assume that that's what's going on inside of us, that's kind of where the conceptual rethinking we would submit needs to be done.
Yeah.
Because a tensegrity structure, can you hold it up one more time, Deborah? Sorry.
Sure.
I keep giving you these little exercises. Put your fingers on the strings around one of the knobs. Like, can you hold it can you hold it kind of by the knob
like
or
this?
The strings? Yeah.
Okay, so that I'm...
Yeah, can you hold it that way? Yeah.
All right.
And then
still touching the... Go ahead.
Here, just hold it by a string. Let's do it easy. Hold it by a string. And now with your other hand, find any other length of string and pull on it. Do you feel a change in the string you're holding?
That one compared to pulling on it. Yeah. So it's actually...
What if you try? Yeah. What if you tried pulling on a different string?
Yeah. Different pull.
Yeah. What if you tried pulling on one of the knobs?
Oh, that has a different sense too. Okay.
So how would you work that out mathematically? I mean, think of that. And you've got the simplest, just about the simplest tensegrity structure you can have.
Yeah.
The simplest would have 3 struts, but you've got a tensegrity icosahedron essentially. And you just tried 3 different experiences that each felt distinct. Yeah. And I think you could do this for hours.
Right.
Now, how can we reduce that to a surefire kind of equation? I know what's going on biomechanically. It's hard.
That would be difficult. Right? Yeah. Well, you know what I say to patients when I explain to them about tensegrity when I'm doing treatment on them is I say this, I explain this is a tensegrity structure. And then I talk about injuries and how bone expands with injuries and how there's distortions, etc. And so I say, imagine that there's an injury, right? There's an expansion of the bone and it gets distorted. Then I say to them, how would you fix that? And so then, they'll line it back up and bring my hand back in. I say, that's what I'm going to do with your body. And people get that. It's very simple.
Exactly. So we use the structure as you have it there as a way to say, okay, what do I need to consider in biology that has been overlooked because this other framework of a building, of a machine, has been so dominant for so long. Even our language, it's just everywhere, and it makes it a challenge to even talk about what's going on with biotensegrity, with living organisms from that biotensegrally informed perspective, because the words aren't there. So many of our words are rib cage, spinal column. I mean, it's everywhere.
And cage, it sounds like it's being blocked in.
Yeah. So it's really hard. We've got a lot of what's great about it is it creates huge new territory for exploration and for another way of understanding why, when something works because of what you're doing, why it works, how it's working.
Yeah. And, I love that helical aspect of it too. So, putting my hands on it like this and feeling that helical action, that's going to change my practice. I'm looking forward to thinking more about that helical aspect.
Buckminster Fuller called it in, out, around, that's the movement of life. And I think if you just look at a plant growing, I mean, you don't have to go far to see it, that in, out, around. So when it goes in, it's going around, and when it goes out from the center, it's going around. And we were playing with that in our breathing exercise earlier. And I should have mentioned Buckminster Fuller because he's the one who came up with the word tensegrity. So he and Kenneth Snelson met at Black Mountain College in the summers of 1948 and 1949. And Snelson was kind of working as his model builder for whatever Bucky wanted for the class he was going to be teaching. And that's how Snelson was, who had already been studying Bauhaus and had been studying mobiles and all kinds of, how do forces and counter forces work. That's how he was able to devise a tensegrity for the first time. And then Fuller came up with this word to describe it, tensegrity, which is a portmanteau of tensional integrity.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
When I first met Stephen Levin, so I was attending a matrix repatterning. Then it was called actually tensegrity training course. But anyway, so Stephen Levin was there and I went to dinner with him and a few others. And I thought, I'm going to sit right next to him. I want to pick his brain. I want to get to know him. This guy is kind of like an icon in this world of tensegrity and PASTA. So anyway, we had a nice chat back and forth. And he told me, he said, when he started doing this type of work with his patients as an orthopedic surgeon, that he did 80% less surgeries. I was really impressed by that.
He he went to his wife, the woman he was married to at the time. She passed away many years ago, but she was a social worker. And he went to her and he said, look, I'm finding that with manual medicine, I can have better results.
Wow.
And our salary is going to go down. Because, I mean, think of it, an orthopedic surgeon, you've got to pay a ton of money for malpractice insurance, right? Because you're doing surgery. It's an expensive profession, not just one that makes a lot of money. So he was still having to pay all those expenses. But his rate of why put someone through surgery?
Yeah.
If you can take care of it with manual medicine. And when he was studying in Philadelphia, John Monell, who's kind of a legendary manual medicine guy, was teaching at the medical school. And Steve thought, I don't understand what this guy's doing at all. So he just spent all his extra time trying to figure out what John Monell was doing. John Monell was only there for a short time, so it was a lucky break. And Steve then started um, or became involved in a manual medicine organization. I can't remember what it was called. And he became an officer in the organization so that he could get all these manual medicine people together and learn
Mm-hmm.
from them. Vladimir Yanda, Janet Travell, he's got
Mm-hmm.
photographs with all these amazing manual medicine people. And so when he began to understand why manual medicine was so effective through the lens of understanding biotensegrity better, the more he did, the more he realized he didn't need, I mean, if somebody needs surgery, you do the surgery. But we know, I mean, the medical information is out there. Surgery for back pain, surgery for knee pain, we know these things are short-lived solutions that very often cause
Mm-hmm.
more trouble in another area.
Yeah.
And so for him to give that up, yeah, I think it's an amazing story. So he didn't give up surgery. He was still doing it, but he was only doing it when he felt it was
Yeah.
needed. And his
Mm-hmm.
his present wife, Olga, was first a client.
Oh, really?
And she had this horrible, I can't remember whether it was a back pain or a hip pain or whatever. And they didn't date until after she was no longer his client. But
Okay.
but she talks about how, she was going from one doctor to another and they wanted to do surgery and she really was trying to avoid that. And she did.
Mm. Awesome.
I mean, that was well over 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I was told that I was going to need surgery on my shoulder, that I had 3 rotator cuff tears and a labral tear, and I had a lot of shoulder pain. And the doctor wanted to do surgery and cut my bicep tendon, by the way. I know. And because of what I know, I knew that I didn't need surgery. I just wanted to know what was going on and what I needed, like figure out how to work on that, which I did. And my shoulder's doing great. I'm not saying it's 100%, but I'm swimming 3/4 of a mile. And that's pretty awesome to be able to do that. I thought I was going to have to give up my swimming, not career, but lifestyle. And I don't. I get to continue to swim. And my shoulder, I'm really happy with how well it's doing.
And how many times do we not get to experience the body's self-healing capacities because surgery
Mhm.
intervenes
Yeah.
and may sometimes prevent some of that capacity or impair some of
Yeah.
that capacity for healing because of this idea of a machine model.
Hmm.
And again, when surgery is needed, it's needed. I'm not
Right.
a medical professional. I can't make that decision. But I tell people when you get a second opinion from another surgeon, you've gotten a second first opinion. You haven't really gotten a second opinion.
That's true.
You need to go to other kinds of practitioners, and then you can get a second opinion.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it comes from like, my shoulder hurts so much. There must be something wrong with the shoulder rather than the
Mhm.
idea that, well, the rib cage could be coming into play. Something could be coming up from your foot. Something could be coming from your cranium.
Mhm.
So let's look at the relationship of
Mhm.
everything and let's see how that plays into the shoulder. And I've experienced that myself, whereas like I was convinced something was wrong in my shoulder and it wasn't. It was my rib cage. I had rings, that were shifted and I was getting tension in the nerves and but it felt like it was my shoulder. But when I started to use imagery to realign the rings, and then I also saw how my foot was coming into play. I started doing some work on my foot, and that made me stack up better in my rings. And then, yeah, I could reach my arm all the way up by my back, and I would have said, no, something feels like it's torn, or it's like I had this frozen shoulder. And it's like once I got that relationship with the body, it's like everything just unraveled. And it's like my shoulder's back.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Ida Rolf was famous for saying, where you think it is, it ain't.
Right.
And she's not the only therapist who works this way. And
Yeah.
I've also heard, I think maybe Leonid is the one who says this, but, or maybe Steve, but so, you know, we take a picture of your shoulder, you've got pain. They look at the picture, they say, oh, here's the problem, right? They're making a lot of assumptions. I guarantee you, these people who are medically trained I have heard say, this is not me, that there are 10 people or 100 people walking around with the same kind of image with no pain whatsoever.
Right.
So we make an assumption because a picture that we think is the right picture isn't right. And we think we can go in there and fix it like a car mechanic. Right? And you've maybe heard me say this. If you bring your car to the mechanic and you say there's a squeak in the right front tire and they start working on your radio, you would say, I'm going to another mechanic, right? But that is what's going on with the body, because it's not built from parts that are from different places that are assembled, and then each part has one job to do and is engineered to do that one job. That's got very little to do with how we as organisms come to be and are organized and function.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. You know, I love it when we're doing our podcast, Solange and I, and so we do a certain movement with a certain focus. You know, say we're doing something with the shoulder or with the heart or the lungs, and so then we stop to notice, to see the change. So we might compare flexibility or strength or support. And the thing that I love is when I feel it somewhere else, we'll make comments, and I'm always surprised too, because it's like, oh, I didn't expect to feel a change there. Oh, that feels so much better, when it's not in the same location that we're actually moving.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So I love hearing about your work and how you're already using these ideas, right? Because they are the ideas that are natural to living systems.
Right. Yeah.
And all biotensegrity is doing is giving you a sort of additional, perhaps scientific framework for greater insights that are right in line with what you're already doing, because it's working.
Yeah. Tons of fun too. You never gets boring.
I also wanted to, we talked about how, when we were getting ready for the podcast, about this feeling of being fully integrated. And I know you work with clients on exactly that, right? And as a movement teacher, it's always interesting if somebody has a pain in their knee and we're doing Tai Chi, I'm going to say to them, let all the forces go around the knee and not through it, and let your knee be free and not involved. Let it rest and let everything around where the pain is carry the forces. People with their imaginations can do things like that. They can change how the body manages forces. The power of metaphor is incredibly, it's just amazing when we're doing movement or manual therapy, right? I don't do manual therapy, but I know that manual therapists will use this as well. And when somebody has a joint replacement, what do you do then? Well, I would say this is your welcome guest. So whether it's your hip or your knee or whatever that's been replaced, which is a substitution, it's not really a replacement. It's more like when you're cooking and you don't have lemon juice, so you use orange juice. It may work, but it's not going to give you the same thing. It's a substitution. And people can integrate better, even a mechanical joint, because they're treating it as the welcome guest in their body and not othering it. Do you see? And we talked about this whole body experience, and I just wanted to awaken a sense memory you may have already of such a thing, right? So if you're going to lift a chair that has a bit of weight to it, what do you do? Well, if you're in a hurry and there's a million things going on and now you have to move that chair, you may injure yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you are not in a hurry and you need to pick that chair up? What do you do?
You want to hear what I do?
Yes.
Okay. I pretend I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay,
And just, muscle tone, strength, power.
This
And
thing
it
is going to be
works.
easy to move, right?
That's right.
That is fantastic. I love that. Or if you have to push a car. I grew up in New England where you have to push cars out of the snow all the time.
Yeah.
And there's a way to do it, and there's a way not to do it. And if you get in there and just try to muscle everything, and if you think it's your arms, you're not going to last. That car's never getting out of the snow. But when you crouch down and you gather yourself, like a cat getting ready to pounce gathers itself, like Deborah as Arnold Schwarzenegger lifts the chair, gathers herself together, right? You don't say, okay, I'm going to pretend my arms are like the arms of Arnold Schwarzenegger. No, you say, I am. You see, the whole body's involved, right?
Yeah.
And when you do that, if you're going to be pushing a car and then you just push a little and you've got to work with that rocking back, you've got to get an oscillation started. And you've got to, it's like pushing a kid on a swing. You only have to add a little bit to add a lot.
Yeah. That's true.
So we have a lot of body knowledge.
Yeah.
About how things are and work in the world. But sometimes we just forget to use it. But if we come to a situation where we've got to pick up, what if you had to pick up an injured dog? That had a good size to it. You would organize your body and take that animal in to your whole self.
Right.
From the toes, from the bottoms of the feet to the top of the head. That weight is not being borne by the arms and the shoulders. You let it become part of your whole self.
Yeah.
And that is what is sustainable.
Well, it reminds me too of the nervous system. So I was in Florence and I was getting to do some tours. So we were going through a vineyard, and at the end of the vineyard, the tour guide pulls out a key from under a rock. So key much larger than this, very old key, hundreds of years old. And he's trying to unlock the door. He has permission to go into this vat where we can get our wine and, take it home. So anyway, so he's trying to, unlock it, and he's struggling with it for quite a while. And I'm thinking to myself, I think I can do this. So anyway, I say, well, let me try. So anyway, I put the key in, and you just go into a different place in your body, where you become basically in my nervous system, I'm connecting with this key to the lock, right? And how to unlock that. And so right away, I was able to unlock it and get in.
You're connecting with your whole self, I would say. And I would say, yes, the nervous system's part of it, but I think the whole thing together.
Yeah.
And then you're connecting through the key.
Yeah.
You have to feel through the key to the lock. And you can, and we do that with things. And you did that. That's amazing. It's a great story.
It was fun.
Oh. Well, this has been amazing, Susan. Before we close, what do you want to share with our listeners? What should they know about biotensegrity? Maybe one final thought about it?
It is a new and fast growing and fast changing field. And there are new insights coming all the time, and they're coming from all directions. So if you're interested in joining the conversation, we would love to have you. And if you have any questions, we're here to provide whatever resources we can for you. I mean, we have had people who inspired by biotensegrity, they're making garden sculptures. There's a gentleman who builds puppets who's now remaking some of Tom Flemon's sculptures. We have people in the medical community. We have people in the robotics community. I mean, it's really varied, which is great for a fast growing new field because the conversations are delightful. So I would say go to biotensegrityarchive.org, get on the email list for the archive, go to the Biotensegrity Archive YouTube channel and listen to a few tea parties. We've got every kind, including many with great physiotherapists, many that are directly related to physiotherapy, to movement therapy, to light touch work, a lot of the stuff you do. And just know that there's a community of people that loves to be in conversations with communities like the community of people who are doing or studying the Franklin method, where we can get lots of great cross-pollination going.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we really appreciate having you on today. You always have amazing things to share and explain. And I love the way that you bring different examples to teach us different things about the body. It's just so fascinating.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Susan. It was so generous of you to share your experiences and your time with us.
Thank you. I've got one more thing I should have said.
Oh, sure.
Build a tensegrity. You can go to my YouTube channel, Susan Lowell de Solorzano, and there are instructions for building one with stuff you've got around the house. You can go to embodiedbiotensegrity.ca. They've got great instructions, a lot of free material there. Build a tensegrity. Because if I could talk to you all day about the taste of a strawberry, are you going to know what a strawberry tastes like? I could give you 10 books on how to swim. Are you ready to jump out of the boat?
No.
So feel it. Just build one. And then, if you felt like it was a waste of time, come back and let me know.
And
we actually talked about that too, didn't we, Solange? That we should build one.
We're going to do a video. Deb and Solange build a tensegrity. That'll be coming out soon. Be on the lookout for that.
That'll be fun.
That's great.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you so much again, Susan.
Absolutely.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
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 Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we would greatly appreciate it if you would leave us a review. You can also become a patron of the podcast. Join our patron program to get access to movement practices from each episode, bonus episodes, and Q&As where we answer any questions you have about the practices. We look forward to practicing with you and continuing to share our passion. As we say in the Franklin Method, better information leads to better navigation. Keep practicing, and we'll see you next time.